grab a seat if there is a seat for you.
Take off your tie. Jon put one
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Cynthia Nixon. I want to thank you all for joining us at this very special ceremony as we officially co-name Nevins Street between Flatbush and Livingston in honor of Jon Kest. Jon was, quite simply, the most innovative, the most well-respected, the most beloved community organizer among poor and working-class people in New York City. It's only fitting that we stand here today to honor his memory underneath the building where he worked so hard for so many years on behalf of so many underserved New Yorkers. Most of us know Jon as the executive director of New York Communities for Change, or as one of the founders of the Working Families Party, or as one of the driving forces behind New York Acorn. But he was also a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. And I want to especially acknowledge his wife Fran, his son Jake, his brother Steve, his sister Anna, and his parents Martin and Ruth, who are with us today. I would now like to introduce Council members Brad Lander and Steve Levin, who co-sponsored the legislation renaming this street in Jon's honor. They will welcome us all here today.
Okay, let's be honest. Jon is not beaming down on us this morning. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's got that incredulous look on his face with that wry but irritated smile. What the? You're doing what? It's 10 days before a critical election that could determine whether we can win a minimum wage increase for hundreds of thousands of people, and you're at a street naming? For me? You and Levin and Melissa passed a law to do this? And Bill signed it at an outdoor desk in front of the Brooklyn Public Library? What's the matter with you? And he's right, of course, as usual. I miss that look a lot. I got used to it over the years of my friendship with Jon. I got it for the first time more than 20 years ago when I interviewed with Jon at the old Acorn offices at Flatbush and Church Avenue, and eventually told him that I just couldn't cut it as an Acorn organizer. Again, upstairs here at 2-4 Nevins Street when I told him I was thinking about running for office, and he made very clear I should stay as an advocate whose work was devoted to strengthening organizing. I do think he eventually forgave me for that, but I'm not sure. I got it in the course of so many campaigns for affordable housing in Brownsville, for inclusionary zoning throughout the city, for more equal education, for the fight to support low-wage workers, when I proposed some knuckleheaded or misguided idea or wasn't working quite hard enough. And I confess, even toward the end, in Fran and Jon's living room in Flatbush, when I wasn't sure that a few fast food workers in Brooklyn would be willing to go out on strike. In almost every case, Jon was right. He was a brilliant, fearless, tireless, strategic organizer, which is why we always sought his advice. But somehow I never felt discouraged or diminished by that look or by his words. In fact, though Jon wasn't one for touchy-feely leadership development, I felt, well, as though it was in fact part of my leadership development. Because it wasn't about me or about Jon, it was about the work. It was about the work that we are required to do to support low-income tenants in appalling housing conditions in their struggle for a decent place to live, to help those fast food workers who have stood up in extraordinary fashion to demand dignity and fair wages, not just in Brooklyn or in New York City, but all across the country and beyond. And to build the organizing, advocacy, coalition, and political institutions that we need to make this city and this country come just a little closer to its ideals of equality. So the truth is, this event, this sign, this street renaming, it isn't really for Jon. It is for us, for his family and the people that knew him through his organizing, so deeply entwined, and what an honor to be with Fran and Steve and Jake and Anna and Jon's parents. To have one more place to remember that look, to remember what we learned from Jon, and to recall in his memory that we're inspired, in fact required, to keep pushing forward in the work for justice. I think the simple thing that Jon would want us to remember here is, in the words of one of the only organizers that could come close to paralleling him, Joe Hill, don't mourn, organize. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank Steve for working together to pass the legislation to make this happen. We have an incredible array of officials with us. I want to recognize a few who are here. We have Congressman Jerry Nadler, who's here with us. Thank you. And his wife Joyce as well, who was close to Jon, as so many of us were. Councilmember Jumaane Williams is here in the back. He's dressed for organizing. Councilmember Lori Cumbo. And I think we'll have some others as well. And I also want to give a special shout out to Rachel Goodman, my chief of staff, who organized today's event, and I really appreciate the work that she did to put it together. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here, and I particularly want to thank Fran and Jake, Martin, Ruth, Steve, Amy, and Anna for being here, for making this day possible. So we're going to hear from a lot of luminaries today about the life and work of Jon. But there's one thing that I wanted to remark upon, and that's, we are in a new era in New York City government. We are in a progressive era, and that means that we are doing everything possible to focus on the needs of low-income New Yorkers and working New Yorkers and New Yorkers that need a helping hand and that are looking for a fair wage and fair benefits for fair work. And that is more reflective now than ever of who we are as a city. And in so many ways, Jon really was the architect for this. And this is where we are as a city today, in our amazing city government, from Mayor de Blasio to Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Public Advocate Letitia James, Controller Scott Stringer, and so many others. That is a testament to the hard work and the architecture, the structure that Jon put in place. And I think that really deserves recognition, and I'm very proud to be able to be here today as part of that. And secondly, in the location of this street bearing his name, it makes sense, obviously, because it's across the street from the New York Communities for Change headquarters here at the corner of Flatbush and Nevins. But I think it also is fitting because this is really the heart of downtown Brooklyn. This is where you feel the pulse and the horns, but the pulse of who we are as a city and who we are here in Brooklyn as a borough. And so I could think of no more fitting place to bear his name as somebody who dedicated his life to helping people and to helping humanity, both on a large scale and on a small scale. So I want to thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Cynthia. But what a wonderful day! Thank you.
Let me just also recognize Assemblyman Walter Mosley, who's joined us.
Thank you, council members. I now want to turn things over to someone who needs no introduction here on Nevins Street, someone who spent decades organizing alongside Jon on behalf of low-income New Yorkers, someone who is uniquely qualified to talk about Jon's legacy, Bertha Lewis.
All right. Yes, this is the ultimate revenge against the establishment. So, hey, everybody. Ain't this some crazy, this is nuts here, but it is the ultimate revenge because, it's not that Jon was an advocate, wasn't that he was an activist, but he was an organizer. And as we all were trained in old school, organizers organize organization. He was my mentor. This street naming, as some would say, would be anathema to him. But here's the thing that I know about Jon. When I first started working for Acorn, he was a mentor that took in, a 40-plus-year-old woman limping around with a broken ankle, great attitude, and just looked at me. My first day that I was supposed to be on the job, I was locked up in jail for assaulting a police officer. Your first day on the job. I wasn't an organizer, and Jon just, when I sheepishly came into the office, just said, look, whenever you get arrested, you have to have a plan, so don't do this again. This street naming, again, is another sort of symbolic thing that those who know Jon, who say, oh, he wouldn't want this. When I began, and I realized Jon was my boss, I remember Fran was in the office one day and I said, look, we're gonna have a birthday party for Jon as the boss. So Fran looked at me like I was out of my mind. She's like, what? First of all, people don't really like him. They're not gonna have a birthday party. And secondly, Jon is never gonna allow a birthday party. He doesn't do things like that. So I said, well, I don't care. Because, the boss is the boss. So I went around and got him a mug, just like he was some corporate guy. Got everybody back in the room. Got a birthday cake. And we all sang happy birthday and surprised him. And he tried to be grumpy. But I know Jon, he secretly loved it. He loved it. And guess what? Even though, as Brad said, he would be saying, every last one of you jokers need to be on the doors, talking about the election. You need to be in the neighborhood on Saturday at this time. Naming this street for him, he secretly likes it. He loves it. Trust me. Jon loves this stuff. Because it was him and Fran who were prescient enough to come and establish and draw a line in the sand against inequality right here in Brooklyn. And now look what's happening. So thank you all for being here today. But there is a price to pay for admission to this party. And this is it. Everybody stand up. Who's sitting down, stand up. Get up, get up. You know the deal. The people will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Thank you.
like to introduce New York City Public Advocate, Letitia James.
First to Fran and the family, Jon lives on in my heart and in the hearts of all New Yorkers and particularly Brooklynites. Let me say this, that whatever gentleman or woman who steps to this podium without a tie, you dishonor the memory of Jon. Remove your tie when you come to this podium, particularly today. Jon never wore a tie. Take off your tie. Mr. Mayor, do you have a tie? See? You see? There you go, Bill. Okay, Steve, there you go. Do not dishonor his memory. Thank you very much. So, my name is Letitia James, and I am the public advocate because of Jon Kest. And let me just say that someone once said, the ends you serve that are selfish take you no further than yourself. But the ends that you serve for others take you to eternity. Jon is in eternity, and he's in the hearts and minds of all of us, and he will live on. And it's so ironic that we are renaming the street after someone who really talked about social justice at a time when we are seeing all this new development. I see Congressmember Nadler who's looking around saying, is this really Brooklyn? Yes, Congressmember, it's Brooklyn. We need to ensure that there is more affordable housing. We are seeing so many families being displaced in Brooklyn, in this part of Brooklyn. Jon wanted to have all these developers be held accountable. It's really critically important that we honor his legacy by believing in the mission of Mayor de Blasio and building affordable housing for low and moderate income families, and particularly all of the homeless who are living in our shelters tonight. That's what we can do to honor his legacy. That's what we can do. And we must continue to honor his legacy by standing up for car wash shadows and individuals who want to raise the wage in Albany. Let us march to Albany and demand justice for all New Yorkers. Let us march to Albany and demand affordable housing, raising the wage so that Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito will control the minimum wage. Let us do that together. He was a legend. And there is just no other way to describe him. His commitment to social justice, his ability to organize and turn out crowds. He was, by any barometer, an extraordinary leader. But he never lost his simple touch and his ability to understand that all humanity, everyone could reach the highest of heights. All that they need is some assistance, and they needed a hand, a helping hand. So, his spirit lives on today, and the movements that Jon started, and it's up to all of us to see them through. And let me just make a commercial. You can see them through this November on the ballot. Vote Working Families Party. Yes, I said it. Yes, I said it. Make sure the party not only stays alive, but let's send a resounding message that WFP lives and lives on, and it will live on strongly, and it will continue to push the needle forward towards progress. Jon lives.
I would now like to introduce Mayor Bill de Blasio.
I want to thank Cynthia Nixon for leading this ceremony today and for everything she did. She believed in Jon Kest's mission, and she did a lot about it. Let's thank Cynthia. She went to jail for it, right? Now, Tish James stole one of my best lines, because this morning I normally do this, I reach for this, and I literally found my hands paralyzed. And I said, it would be morally wrong to wear a tie to this ceremony. So I must have been in 1,000 meetings and events with Jon Kest. I can say, if you put a polygraph on me right now, I never saw a tie on that man. That's right. That's right. I saw an occasional shirt without a stain. But I'm gonna uphold his dignity there. I did see an occasional shirt without a stain, but never a tie. Jon You know, I wanted to say at the outset, we are feeling, obviously, the seriousness of the moment and the sorrow is by definition, and we're also feeling a sense of celebration. It's that duality that these moments bring out. But the celebration part is very, very strong today. The joy is very real. I'm looking around at a generation of people that Jon Kest helped to bring up. And it's one thing to singularly affect the world or change the world. It's one thing to contribute individually. But Jon brought dozens, hundreds of people into movements for change. And what's so interesting as I look around and see so many friendly faces, no one left those movements for change. You know, there's a popular saying, I'm going to borrow from it, once you meet Jon Kest, you never go back. Inside joke. So, Charlene taught me that one. The fact is, Jon had the ability to teach, and teach in a way that just deeply connected with people, lifted them up, put them on a path, kept them on that path. That is an amazing attribute. You look through history, the names we associate with greatness and with positive and progressive change, Dr. King and Gandhi and Cesar Chavez, they all were teachers. They were activists, they were agitators, they were organizers, but they were teachers too. They not only taught the larger public about a set of issues and what we had to do, they taught a generation how to act in this world, how to move this world, how to feel empowered and purposeful. And Jon did that with each and every one of us. And it's had an amazing, intense, kind of pervasive effect on so many of us. You know, I don't have one of those bracelets that says WWJKD. What would Jon Kest do? I don't have a bracelet that indicates that, but it happens all the time anyway. I can hear his voice. I can think of the situations where he said, wait, don't do that, let's do this. Or don't miss that possibility, that door that could open for us, that new vista, that new idea. That's who Jon was. He was such a fundamentally optimistic, energetic human being. He taught us to overcome some of our narrowness, some of our sense of limitation. Think about that. What an incredible gift to give to the world. What an incredible legacy. Teaching people how to see what's in them that they didn't even know was there. It's the epitome of community organizing, right? If you had to summarize it in one sentence, that might be one of the definitions. Well, Jon did that with community leaders and everyday citizens, but he did it with all of us. Taught us to believe, taught us to see the possible, taught us not to limit ourselves, not to talk ourselves out of victory. I often say to my brother and sister progressives, don't talk yourselves out of victory, don't talk yourselves out of your own power. I learned some of that from Jon Kest. And that is an extraordinary legacy. Now, I want to thank everyone who's here today. I want to thank everyone, because if you're going to live in the ideas of Jon and play out the ideas of Jon, it is not by any means only the elite we want to thank for being here. We want to thank everyone, every organizer, every activist, every citizen who is here today. Let us clap for all of us. And yes, we thank the elected officials too, because they come in handy. We have elected officials who, a lot of them learned from Jon. Tish said it beautifully. A lot of us learned from Jon. A lot of us are carrying on his work. Jon had a keen ability to not have the most total faith in elected officials while still knowing you had to work with them. And he struck that balance nicely. I had many a day with John. What do you used to call them? The accountability sessions? I got many a day with John where he raised tough questions and pressed me and pressed a lot of us. But he never stopped working with us. He never stopped hoping we would get it, giving us an opportunity to go there to a better place. And that's amazing because that takes a subtlety and a human capacity to have a sense of you need to see something better, but you're not giving up on people either. And John did that with all of us. So I thank the elected officials that are here. And I just want to say John did so much right here on this corner. I love that we're naming this corner for him. It's in that building. With Acorn and then New York Communities for Change, with Working Families Party, so much happened that changed the world and continues to change the world. You know it changed the world because it came under attack. What's a badge of honor? By the way, did Dr. King come under attack? Did Gandhi come under attack? Did Cesar Chavez come under attack? Anyone who makes progressive change comes under attack. John got his share of that. Therefore, you knew he was doing the right thing. And here, so much of that happened that was transcendent, that framed New York City, New York State today, some of which reached even nationally in terms of its impact. So much of what we all are working on right now are things that John pushed us to do and set in motion and put in our minds. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the other people here, but I have to make a personal point of privilege because Charlene and I had many, many meetings with Jon Kest, and you will notice that John had the ability to make his point, make it again, make it again, make it again in the meeting, and then call you in an hour and say, what about what we just talked about? And Charlene and I would often compare notes about John, and we just, it would sometimes be a little frustrating, but you had to love it. You had to love it because it worked, because you couldn't stop thinking about the thing he talked to you about. And then he'd call an hour later on top of that. And we learned to have just a real affection for not just the thinker and the activist, but the human being. And the human being was so extraordinary because there was one thing more important to him than the movement. And he put his heart and soul and every hour you could find into the movement, but one thing was more important, and that was his family. And I watched this very carefully because John and I would compare notes all the time. Charlene and I were married. We started our family, and we were involved in the same work at the same time with John. We were constantly talking about how do you strike the balance. And I took a lot of inspiration from John because he had a very simple rule that I saw play out. When family needed him, everything else stopped. It was as simple as that. And it didn't mean he walked away from his work. It's just he had to do both at once, and his work had to wait until his family was attended to. And that is a human lesson to us all. John taught us a lot of political lessons, but he taught us a lot of human lessons too. So to all his extraordinary family members, and this is a beautiful and wonderful family that, by the way, John was great, but this family made John great too. Let's be clear about that. So Fran, Jake, Ruth, and Martin, Steve, Amy, Anna, all the family members here. We have to not just celebrate John's life and talk about how much we miss him. We have to celebrate all of you for giving us Jon Kest, for giving the world that blessing. And that's a blessing that is carrying on as we speak. He does live because his work continues. His ideas are present. The tools, the strategies that he taught, we're all using. He should have a trademark every time. He should get a royalty every time we use one of his ideas. Sometimes we forget to say that's a Jon Kest idea, but it still is a Jon Kest idea. I want to thank all the folks who worked with him, believed in him, supported him. There are so many here, but I especially want to note Michael Mulgrew and Bob Master and Dan Cantor and Bill Lipton and Bertha Lewis, the ever shy Bertha Lewis. Ismeni Speliotis, Jonathan Weston, so many people who learned from Jon, thought with Jon, heard a lot more of those repetitions than I did from Jon and kept coming back for more. I want to thank the folks who sponsored the bill that made this street renaming possible, Steve Levin and Brad Lander. Let's thank them for that. And I'll just say that the things that are happening today in New York City, I want to just finish with this point. The things that are happening, they're happening in large measure because of Jon Kest. It's as simple as that. They're happening because of things he started working on that people said were impossible. Paid sick leave was impossible, by the way, just want to let you know. Impossible. The things we're doing on wages and benefits, impossible. His vision kept bringing up the idea years ahead of its time and helping to make it something that was ripe for action. So we now have paid sick leave in New York City on a grand scale, and Jon Kest was one of the people who gave life to that. And we've taken this great step forward with universal pre-K. The only thing Jon Kest would say if he were sitting here today is, why didn't it happen sooner? But it happened in large measure because of the people who came together, who had one common link, and it was Jon Kest. So I've got to tell you, you can't ask for more than that in life. You can't ask for more than that. The love of family and the priority he put on family, the way he nurtured his friends and colleagues, the way he taught us, the example he left to us, but much more importantly, the ideas he put in motion that now become a reality, and they are benefiting brothers and sisters. They're not benefiting hundreds of people. They are not benefiting thousands of people. The ideas that Jon helped put in motion are benefiting millions of people, and that is a very good life, and we celebrate it today. Thank you, and God bless you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce New York City's Comptroller, Scott Stringer.
Thank you, Cynthia, and I'm very honored to be invited to speak for a minute or two about Jon Kest. And I just want to say to all of you, for me, my meetings with Jon was as much about strategy as it was about organizing. And like Tish, there was no way I would be controller today without his strategy, his organizing, and his passion. But that strategy and passion, that gift that he's given a generation of elected officials, does not come cheap. He demanded and expected that you would be held to a special standard, a standard that requires you to think about the world as a goal to lift everybody up and leave nobody behind. That has always been his legacy. And I remember at the beginning of New York Communities for Change, he called me up and he said, I want you to do me a favor. I want to have a few of your friends to come to a reception. I'm not going to ask for any money. I want to make my case. I want to talk about what New York Communities for Change could be about. And I said, well, you know, Jon, I don't know if I can raise money for something that nobody knows about. He says, I just want you to put me in a room with people and let me talk to them. And I never had a fundraiser at my very small apartment. My new wife and I did everything we could to get it ready. And he came in and talked to about 20 individuals. And he talked about what his vision was, about a progressive city, about the fact that there are so many hungry people and so many kids who are not getting the education they deserve. He talked in a low voice. He didn't have a prepared speech, but he looked everybody in the eye and said, we have to engage. It was the best fundraiser I've ever had because people believed in Jon Kest. They saw the vision. And let's face it, years ago, no one could imagine what this government would be today. None of us. Everybody had hopes and dreams, but nobody believed. On the most local city council level to the highest office in New York City, nobody believed truly that we as progressives could be successful. But Jon Kest did. And what I think is unfair about life is that the great ones never see it to the end. They're always taken away from us. Always at that moment when they should enjoy what they built for everybody, they're taken away. And so I just want to say to Fran and Jake and the whole family, this is the legacy that you will always have. There are children that will be born today who will have a better life and a better opportunity, better housing, better working conditions, a real educational opportunity. There are children today who will benefit from a man they never will have met, never will have understood that contribution. And the reason this street naming is important is because this will be the street that children will walk down and grandparents will hold their hand and they will look up and say, you have to know the story of this man. Because of this man and his moment in time and the time he was on this earth, well, he changed our families' lives. That is the best legacy you can leave to the children you will never meet. And I'm so proud to be here with all of you. Thank you very much.
Jon gave his incredible strength and talent to the organization he helped form in 2010, New York Communities for Change. Through his work at NYCC, Jon developed partnerships to organize New York City's lowest paid and most invisible workforce, those who labor for just above minimum wage in our city's greengrocers, car washes, and fast food establishments. We could not hold this ceremony today without hearing from some of those workers. And I would like to welcome Marie Pierre, the board chair of NYCC, and Gregory Reynoso, a former Domino's worker and now an NYCC organizer, to say a few words about Jon.
Good morning.
There's a step here. You're about to get taller. Back up. There you go. Now you're tall.
Good morning. Who are we? NYCC. I know it's cold. Who are we? NYCC. Okay. My name is Marie Pierre, and I'm the board chair of NYCC. And this morning when I was in the laundry, I realized it was about 9:30, and I said, oh shoots, I have a ceremony to go to. And I was dressed like how we go to the laundry. And I said, but I'm not gonna make it. Then I remembered whose ceremony it was. But I had to go back home because you know what? He would say, Marie, come as you are, but one thing, wear your shirt. Where is your shirt? Just wear your shirt. All right? So that's why I'm here. In 1988, I met Jon and Fran, and I became a member of ACON. And of course, I'm not going to go into all the charade as everybody has said. All I can say, he was quite an interesting individual. And I'm not here to go over what all the other speakers have said. I'm here just to give you a perspective from the members' point of view. And I'm going to give it in short and sweet. Before I go into that, I want to thank, of course, Brad Lander and Steve Levin, the council members, who spearheaded this street naming, and of course to all the politicians who were involved. Because I remember telling my husband this morning, I'm going to a street naming. And he said, oh, you're going to put somebody's name up on the street, and what have you done? I said, no. This person has done a lot. And I think our members are going to be real honored to see his name up on the street because he has done real work. So, of course, to his family, I want to thank you all for coming also. And like everybody said, sharing Jon. And just in a few words, I'm going to tell you what Jon has left for our members, or what he gave us. The first thing he gave us is powers in numbers and a voice to the voiceless. He gave us real affordable apartments. Let me say that again. Real affordable apartments. I hope the politicians take note of that one. Of course, he gave our parents and teachers power in organizing on the low and income level basis so that we can have better schools. I said today it seems as though they waited until Jon Kest died for us to go over this preamble all over again about fighting for better schools. But anyway, we will keep on the fight. He also gave us the way to keep politicians accountable. Because as you said, all of them said that he made them accountable, and he showed us how to make them accountable. Of course, he's given us this new vision of how to organize daycare providers, low-wage workers, fast food workers, and I'm sure that all of you all will be very grateful for having done that, for having followed his lesson, because we are seeing all the results now as we go along, as soon as these campaigns become a reality, we are seeing the difference. I want to thank all of who have worked with Jon, including his family, on behalf of all the members, and of course again to the sponsors and the City Council for keeping Jon Kest alive. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks everyone for being here today. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to remember Jon. My name is Gregory Reynoso. I'm one of the organizers from New York Community for Change in the fast food campaign. But before, I was a fast food worker. I was a fast food worker in Brooklyn, making minimum wage, working for a corporation. They make billions, but don't really respect and recognize the hard-working people. When I first heard about the union, when the organizers came to me and talked to me about the union, to be honest, I thought that was crazy. I was like, nah, come on. But when they really talked to me about it, when they explained me, I realized that they was right. That we need to come together and we need to do something to change the city. We need to do something to change our problems. So I decided to stand up, fight. I organized my co-workers. I organized everybody in my store. We was ready to fight. We went on a strike. We demonstrated the company that when people coming together, we are strong and we can make it happen. So after I organized my store, I basically take the decision to keep organizing and keep delivering the message to other people. And I become an organizer in New York Community for Change. And I started learning Jon's legacy, his dream, because this is a dream. When basically nobody believed, he was believing in people. He believed the organizing can really help poor people. So when I go over there and talk to workers, delivering the message, I remember from where I come from, and I just see that these people need help. And we need to encourage the people to organize himself and fight. And this is exactly the dream that Jon started. When nobody was believing, he believed the fast workers can come together. And that's exactly why today, all over the country and all over the world, people are coming together to form a union and tell those companies that we are strong, we are the workers. I feel really good, I feel really proud to be here. I feel like amazing because this is exactly what he wants. And everything I learned, he teach to all the organizers, they teach me. And I'm gonna keep teaching people all over the country and all over the world if it's necessary. I'm gonna keep doing it until we win. I'm gonna keep doing this until every single person in New York City feel that they work hard and they getting what they deserve. Once again, thank you everybody for being here. Thanks every politician for working for people and follow the step of Jon, who just want fair wages, respect, affordable housing for poor people in poor communities. And I encourage every single person to help, to organize, and to help their communities so we can keep moving forward and we can create the New York City for all. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce the Speaker of the New York City Council, Melissa Mark Viverito.
Good morning, everybody. To Fran and Jake and the family, I want to thank you for sharing Jon with all of us. And it's an incredible privilege and an honor to be here today. And it's hard to compete with so much that has been said before. I'm going to just try to be brief. But, you know, though it is a chilly morning, the love and the care that is here today present is extremely heartwarming. And anyone who would not know Jon would get a sense of who he is just by those that are here. The mayor was alluding to the next generation, you know, that Jon helped cultivate and nurture. But if you really look here in terms of those that are present and obviously those that are beyond, it's an intergenerational, right, community. Those that are also not only learning from Jon's experience and his life's work, but also are moving that into the next generation, which is something that we have to continue to do and be committed to. And the symbolism of this corner in particular is really, really deep. That when we talk about this progressive wave and moment that we find ourselves in, and the impact that it is having on uplifting so many people, low-wage workers and families and children, and talking about equity and justice, well, the ripples that helped create that wave really did start and nurture, were emanated from this place. And Jon had a lot to do with that. So it's extremely, really incredible that it is at this moment and this corner that we are doing this street naming in order to recognize and a well-deserved honor for a man who made a lasting impact in this city by really trying to break down those barriers. We talk about the tale of two cities, but we need to make that city one by giving and believing that everyone deserves equity, everyone deserves justice, and that everyone needs to be held to the same standards. And that is what we are here to do, is to move that vision forward that was so much a part of who Jon was. And so he is an incredible human being, he's an incredible person, he's an incredible man, and the least that we could do today is to name a street so that we can continue to be inspired by his commitment and move that legacy forward on behalf of every single New Yorker. So thank you all for being here to be a part of this moment.
Jon knew that education was one of the key factors to lifting up low-wage families, and over the course of his career, he played a central role in bringing together coalitions like the Alliance for Quality Education and the Coalition for Educational Justice. Here to talk about Jon's education activism is Michael Mulgrew, the president of the United Federation of Teachers.
I believe it's good afternoon now, everybody. I feel strange because I saw Jon Kest in a tie. Fran, he had ties. I saw him in a tie once. No, I am not. You can give me the polygraph after you take it. So I always, I have a habit of kidding folks, and I always kidded Jon horribly about how he was dressed. And one day, we had an event at the UFT in the evening, and Jon walked in his usual, but he had a tie on. I just started laughing hysterically, and just kept, and it was a true. If you could just imagine Jon Kest wearing a tie, it was that ugly. It really was just a horrendous tie. It looked like it was stuck in the bottom of a closet, rolled up with shoes on top of it. And I just started laughing. He took the tie off, and he was just disgusted at me. He said, "I can't believe I wore a tie and you're laughing at me." I'm like, "Look at the tie, Jon. If you're gonna wear it, I'll give you one." But those are the moments that I miss. And I wanna, Fran and Jake, you've heard it all day, but thank you. Thank you. And it's interesting that we're here because I know everyone has, I want people to raise their hand if they've had this experience. Sometime since Jon has passed, in the middle of something horrendous, when you had to do one more thing, make one more phone call, you didn't want to do it, you thought you had the right to stop, did all of a sudden Jon come into your head and you did it? I want you to raise your hand. See, that's Jon. He's still there. He's our conscience. And for those of us who were fortunate enough to know and work with him, he will always be our conscience because of the way he did it. It was never a question or a debate about going, whatever the issue was. The debate was how to go, but we were going. It was never a question. We were going to go. And I think Jon would have gotten a kick. This is the proper place. This is the office. But I think Jon would have gotten more of a kick out of the fact that him and I in our discussions, I said, "Jon, no matter what, we'll always be in a struggle." He says, "Yes, there are always those that have and think it's their right to have more, no matter who pays for them to have more." He always said that to me. And I'm looking right now and I see these beautiful luxury high-rise condos going up. And I know Jon would love the fact that this right here, with his name on it, is letting those folks know it doesn't matter. There are more of us who will always be here. You might always think you want to have more, but there will always be us, the soul and the consciousness, to say, we're watching you, we're not going away, and that is the legacy of Jon Kest. Thank you all.
Another of Jon's legacies is his role in the formation of the Working Families Party, which has become a force in city and state politics and has since spread to many other states. Here with us today is the party's executive director, Dan Cantor.
You've heard a lot of reasons why it's appropriate to name the street in Jon's honor. If you were to go onto the roof of the building, you'd find another one that the mayor alluded to unintentionally. There is a forest of cell phone towers on the roof of our building, and what Isaac Stern was to the violin and Michael Jordan to basketball, Jon Kest was to the telephone. He called a lot. I can hear him now. "How you doing?" As if we were long-lost friends who hadn't spoken in 20 years, when in fact he had called me 15 minutes before then on something else. Or he'd call and ask, "What are you hearing?" And of course, everything I had saved up to tell him to show that I was really in the know. Oh, I said, "Oh, I heard that already." When the WFP first started, We were in different, equally plush offices, not far away. Our organizations were on different floors. My office was actually stacked on top of John's, and he calls me one day and says, I have an idea. I need you to drill a hole in the floor and drop a wire down so you can give me one of your phones so I can intercom you instead of having to waste time dialing. And of course I did it. And the net result that it allowed us to kibitz even more. Jon was as great a kibitzer as he was an organizer. And I know that there are so many today here who miss those calls from Jon. He was a true friend, a loyal comrade, and as brilliant an organizer as you could imagine. And my life, like so many others, changed because of crossing paths with him. In my case, it happened in 1976 when I took the train to White Plains for a job interview, at which he offered me one of those well-paid, hard-to-get junior acorn positions. Nice. Should I keep going? Okay. Can't tell. 20 years later, we're still at it. We were still at it, first with the New Party and then Working Families Party. It will shock precisely no one when I say that absent Jon Kest, there would be no Working Families Party. I miss him especially in this year, this election year, with so many delightful decisions having to be made. And I know that, as with Bertha, as with Tish, if I don't urge you to spend an hour emailing your friends and neighbors to vote Working Families, he would get as irritated as Brad said he would, and might actually figure out a way to call me still today. By my estimate, Jon was responsible for about half of the good things that the left has accomplished in New York over the last 30 years. But of all his many accomplishments, I think his greatest was leading New York Acorn through the dark years of the phony right-wing attacks. Phony and right-wing, I think that's redundant, but anyway. And never losing heart, never giving up. That is the Jon Kest way. And that's what I'll think of when I see those 3 short words on the street sign. NYCC is alive and thriving, and even as we can no longer talk with Jon, we carry his memory and the unmistakable sound of his voice in our hearts and minds. Thank you very much.
I would now like to welcome the mayor back to the stage to introduce Jon's family.
So for Fran and Jake and all the family members, I think the moment has come, the moment of truth where we're going to do the unveiling. We'd like you to lead us over to make this formal and official in the name of Jon Kest.
Thank you.